Hi, and welcome to Teaching Tip Tuesday, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning at UWSP. Last week, I talked about how increasing your attention to transparency in learning and teaching, or tilting your course, can improve student valuation of assignments, student learning, and reduce academic misconduct, like using generative AI to complete assignments. This week, I'd like to lean a little further in by giving you some actionable advice on how you can tilt your course. You can begin by clearly articulating the alignment of course components to the students. For all course content, learning activities, and assessments, clearly communicate the relationship between the object and the course or lesson learning outcomes. This helps to clarify for students the why of each learning object. Information you can provide includes whether it will help students develop knowledge and skills. As an aside, for readings, consider providing a list of objectives for the reading or a list of guiding questions. Remember that our students tend to score low on the ACT reading comprehension measures. Providing lists can help them focus by providing goals to meet and can help guide how they're taking notes during the reading. This will improve their reading acumen. Next, provide information on whether this is a practice exercise that's designed to provide feedback on their understanding before you actually evaluate them, or whether this is how you're evaluating their achievement of a specific learning outcome. The more details you can provide about how the pieces of your course fit together and promote achievement of learning outcomes, the more students will get why they should do the work. For learning activities and assessment, you should provide a clear link to the course context. This will help clarify some of the why and how of each course component and improves assessment valuation by students. Be clear, for example, about whether the activity is preparing them for a future course activity, or whether completion of the activity will provide a draft that is refined later. If the assignment is important because it will provide them with feedback that they can use to improve their performance, tell them again and again. Another aside, this will help them to develop a growth mindset, which will also improve their learning. Next, be clear with how they will eventually use the knowledge and skills they're developing, especially if they're gaining or practicing knowledge or skills that they're going to use in a professional context. This is incredibly important in establishing the why of what they're being asked to do. For example, you can address whether they can get a job in the field without mastering the knowledge or skills, or whether they can pass placement exams for professional school without mastery. Clarity in articulating these connections for students can provide a huge increase in compliance and reduction in cheating because it greatly improves student valuation of coursework and ties the coursework to their long-term goals. You should also be transparent in your rationale for specific design components in an assignment or activity. You should address why you are asking the students to do things in a particular way. So, for example, why have peer reviews, or why do a draft before the final product? You should also be sure to address why you're asking them to use or to avoid specific technology. For example, using or prohibiting AI use, or if you're asking them to use a particular program because this software is used in professional practice. When students understand why you want them to do things in a particular way, you're going to get more buy-in from them, and so they'll comply more with assignment restrictions. Instructors often communicate in a general way what they want students to do, in part because it's intuitive to them how students should go about doing it, and they assume that it's going to be equally intuitive to the students. Not so. You should never assume that students are on the same page as you. You should clearly explain what students need to do. This might include providing a list of tasks that they have to complete, explaining if and why there is a preferred order for completion of tasks, discussing mistakes that students usually make and how they can avoid making those mistakes, and clearly stating the requirements for technology use. Grading is often a concern. A lot of instructors like to wait until they see student work before they decide how they should grade assignments. I get it. The idea is that one should see what the ballpark of student responses looks like before one decides what is reasonable to hold the class responsible for. However, the reasoning here is flawed. It's like throwing spaghetti on the wall and waiting to see what sticks. Sometimes that's useful, but you've already told the students what spaghetti you want to stick by articulating learning goals for the students in terms of learning outcomes. You also need to make it clear to the students what good performance will look like. That is, how you'll know that all of the spaghetti stuck. This gives them a target to shoot for, so it's important to make it clear to the students how they're going to be graded. You can do this by providing a list of scoring criteria with point values, making sure that the grading criteria align with the learning outcomes to be demonstrated. You shouldn't be grading students on things that you're not teaching. Include a detailed rubric that will provide students with an understanding of how good performance and poor performance differ by listing the expectations for the different levels of achievement. If you're using the rubrics tool in Canvas, it will further speed your grading because you can basically check off the level of student performance as you grade. Finally, and this is less about tilting your course than another best practice, provide opportunities for students to review, apply, or respond to the feedback you've given them. This is important if you want students to consider the feedback that you've given them and reflect on their learning process. It puts the focus on what you want them to do and learn rather than just on the grade. It also helps to stimulate their growth mindset. Tilting your course is a great way to stress your expectations for student learning, to help students gain confidence, and to reduce students' motivation to cheat by improving their valuation of assignments. And that's this week's teaching tip, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning here at UWSP. Remember, at CITL, we offer support for course design, learning activities, assessment, and pedagogy. Visit our website to schedule a consultation today.